Festival of History. I played 4 little tidbits that start from the early Baroque, the late Baroque, some jazz, some microtonal. That's history. I write history books. I write about Bach. I write about Venetians. I'm interested in history. We've all heard the common things about history. It's the story of the winners. It's the story of the males. It's his story, not her story. We've all heard some of these things before. So after a number of years at Camp Rising Sun, I had the largesse to look back and see if I could take my personal, emotional, idiosyncratic experience and trade it for some objectivity, where I'm not like so tied. And if we could put this first picture up, whoever's got the screen for that. There was this fellow named Roland Burnett Sundown, one without a garden, sunny, tall chief. So he had all these names, and he came from the Senecas, which is a part of the 6 tribes in the north, near Buffalo, Basin, New York, Akron. And I had this very lucky, really lucky, experience. The first woman I fell in love with was a Tonawanda Seneca. So I had a chance, it's like unbeknownst to everyone else. I would go drive, I had a car, I would drive up, don't tell me I had a car. I'd go to the reservation and hang out, where their major concern of their youth was to brag that they're not afraid of heights. Because most of the men would come to New York City and be with other Iroquois, building bridges, skyscrapers. So once they said, "Are you afraid of heights?" and I wasn't, that was like supposed to be a big thing. Okay? I'm bringing the microphone closer. Okay. This is recording, or this is on. So what I heard about this formative counselor, he's never a camper, 1930, Sonny, as they called him, was not too positive. I mean, sure, some of it was the time, the period. In 1922, Roland Sundown was not a U.S. citizen. Senecas were not citizens. So, I don't know if you call it a chip on his shoulder, because he did the opposite of somebody with a chip. He connected with all Indian groups that he could, and he tried to make a kind of pan-Indianism. He was actually against the idea of Native American, especially since he wasn't even a citizen. And I brought some materials. This is an actual picture of him, which came out 5 years ago in a history book of Dartmouth. And I've been to Dartmouth. I don't know how many of you know of it, but for many, many years, until 1970, their motto was in India. And, you know, with PC, it's not looked upon so great, they moved it aside. Well, Roland Sundown was in charge of athletics at Dartmouth, where he got his bachelor's, and he was the Dartmouth Indian. He would wear his headdress, and he would lead the athletic groups, you know, wherever they were going, give the cheers as needed. He invented this slide out of wood, a special design that came from his tradition, where in Dartmouth, when they had the frozen lakes, they could slide and go past the ice like super speed. It's in their museum. They're kind of proud of this guy. But before that, he started off at 17 to get a degree in agriculture. And he did that in Virginia. And as a result of that, or possibly another reason, he became the nature counselor. The other reason might be, he's an Indian. Nature, perfect. But he was a musician. He sang, and it's turning out more and more that this tune that we used to sing at camp every Saturday night to get into kind of this very deep, introspective relationship with yourself and the other people with you. Wear blankets around a campfire, nobody would speak. He was the guy that made it happen. Turns out Freddie had a book from 1922, and the camp started in 1930, so you see there's a little bit of time. And the book was based on Amhak Camp, he was studying camps, and in this particular, it's O-H-M-O-N-K, however you pronounce it, in this camp there was a book that had, according to Michael Engberg, one of our former executive directors, that had, this is 1922, right, 8 years before, council was in there, how was in there. Many of the ideas that they ended up using, like feathers for rewards, they would get Indian feathers. Kids would be divided up in tribes. This wasn't Rolling Sundown. This was the person who paid for the camp. He didn't choose the camp. That was left to somebody else to find the place, which happens to be right near here. 85 years of use. This year, no. And there's a hope to bring that back. So I'm going to talk about the goals of camp changing today. And I'm doing that with the knowledge that things change. People change. What you can say, well, as a school teacher, and by the way, he was a school teacher his whole life. I guess I'll just stay with a little bit more. He got his graduate degree. He fought in the Army in World War II. He came back, he worked in such places as a teacher in Alaska, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, Virginia, and then finally New Mexico, where he got married and had a child. Actually, he died because he got hit by a car, and he was wounded, and he was trying to recover, and he never really recovered. I don't want to tell you the things I've heard said about him, because there's no evidence for any of it, and it's negative. Maybe one. So, in the one history of the camp, there's one mention of him, that he came and visited in 1950, and he walked up and saw all these giant trees that were never there when he was there in 1931, 2, 3, up to 34. But it was mentioned that he was very angry. And the reason he was angry was because he didn't have his flight paid for from New Mexico. I'm going to just say that that being the image and the history of this whole place doesn't sound right to me. Because it's all, it makes him a petty guy who did nothing but hookah. But in fact, maybe I should give you some examples, like really hardcore activity. Can we go to the next slide? You have one more with the word, right? Okay. So, this is a description of how he felt about the word Indian, which right now, I want to say this. We have a huge alumni base of Native Americans. They have never, as far as I know, ever objected to whatever nativisms are part of the camp. And from what I understand, he gave of it. This is what he wanted to share. This is where, and so if you have all this information in a book about how to run an Indian camp, and clearly it was being used, he was the guy on the ground that got the kids motivated, that got everything to happen, to get the kids to take it seriously, to have everybody respect the program. He was super counselor. I really can identify with that. Somebody who was not a camper, who was, this is a quote that comes, I'll paraphrase, a quote from George Ames, who was there in the very beginning, 1930, 31, 5 years in a row. Became the first executive director, and he said there was something special. I'm trying to find pages. I have all the actual hard copy of everything I'm saying to you today with me. Because I want to make sure that at least afterwards you ask me, I can pull it out of the right file. It'd be silly to like look through all of them. But just, you know, going through some of this. Oh, I found, oh, I love it. This is the first executive director, one of the first campers, says this. As a counselor, Sonny was mainly in charge of construction and handicrafts. Among the many projects he was responsible for are the totem poles, still seen around the camp, and a building of the first Sawkill Bridge and the first lean-to. Ames said that Sonny was the perfect role model. in that he was both liked and respected by campers. Sonny had a great sense of humor, but he was also serious about his work and would spend many long hours into the night making sure that the project got finished on time. He was absolutely devoted to the place, and the campers responded to that. So, I have a report by Brendan Glynn, who doesn't seem to be here right now, who wrote an article on construction from 1980, so many years later, and it reads like Roland Sundown was still at camp making everything happen. Of course, it wasn't Roland Sundown, it was Steve Bang who's sitting here right now. And this all is his tradition. This is all coming from his tradition, which adds a lot to why we want to keep that camp active. The camp itself is programmed. I say that as a counselor. What do you think of that? There's always a way to make great conversation, introspection, philosophy, with the camp being part of the program. No way will I ever use the euphemistic insulting term Native American. We informed the Dartmouth Office of Public Programs. This is not Roland, this is his friend. I still proudly wear Indian head cufflinks, he wrote to the Dartmouth Alumni Magazine in '73. I still have the Indian head sweater I wore at Dartmouth as the band leader in 1930 to 31 when Roland Sundown in 32, he wrote Iroquois, which is one of the, one of the 6 nations. Once the Seneca was the largest nation of the 6. Now, 50,000 maybe across the country, some in Oklahoma. Nobody speaks the language. Seneca language is not. Where Roland Sundown and I were proud to be at the forefront of Dartmouth's athletic events. We were proud to be genuine Indians at an Indian school. I still and shall always refer to the Dartmouth Indians. So this was like pretty clear cut. That's Dartmouth 5 years ago. Then you can find all this material that was not even available until the last 5 years, thanks to the internet. Here we have that his name was One Without a Garden. Maybe that's why he traveled. Maybe that's why he made a garden at Camp Rising Sun. And here he's going to speak to an audience of black Americans in 1920 on Emancipation Day. Maybe to give you a little idea where he's coming from in his head. I'm thankful for having the opportunity of coming before you on this occasion to represent my race. It gives me great pleasure, indeed, to take part in this celebration. My race can congratulate yours for its progress, in spite of the shortness of time since emancipation and race prejudice. You have prospered through many hardships. You have played a very large part in all of Americans' past troubles. The most we can say about your part in the last struggle will not be half enough. And more, and more. He wrote for the Chicago Tribune. He wrote thought pieces all across the country. I'm sure what I see is the tip of the iceberg. It can't be all that he did. So, I didn't want to spend too much time on him. I probably spent as much as I should. And now I'm going to move ahead to what the significant dates are for the changing of the goals of the camp. We'll have a start. I'll tell you what they are in a moment. Then we'll have 1979. So the whole period up to that point is one program with experiments. With experiments. Sometimes the camp founder talked to every kid, sitting on a log, he called it, trying to find out what the common problems were that kids had that he could maybe help. And then there would be years like 1965 where he didn't talk to any kids. Nobody. And, there were radical changes going on. But like the Constitution of the United States, the people writing down that all men are created equal, well, many of them had slaves. And the philosophy of the camp required an openness. The first black camper was supposed to be 1949, didn't happen. A public school in Brooklyn chose their best student, who happened to be African American. Freddie considered this controversial. That was his word. And so he suggested to the school leader that recommended this student, he won't be allowed in the front door. So could he possibly come to the back? Or he could come to my home. And of course the school discontinued all connection. And then it would be another 8 or 9 years before a black camp would come. So this was like part of the period. I'd like to think that these first goals were meant, regardless of who was there, even though it was all New Yorkers. And originally, the plan was 1/3 Jewish, 1/3 Catholic, and 1/3 Protestant. That's how the camp actually started. Then in 1979, he had died the year before, was the first year without him. 1979, my first year. So I start without ever having met, we call him Freddie, George E. Jonas. And I picked up from all these counselors that knew the program, which included things that you really see on paper, like campers should be allowed towards the end of the summer to have as much control to run things as possible, as they're capable of. That's a weird kind of thing to put down, so it never got put down. The sitting on a log thing, what's that? That comes from Harvard. There are other locations with all these ideas. They don't have to be original to work. But in 1982, that's just 3 years later, all the staff at the camp were let go. Now these staff were prominent, accomplished people. I respect them tremendously. I was not there. I had left the year before. When they were all let go, and I was told I couldn't come back the next year because I knew them too well, then there was a new staffing idea. So the new staffing idea means the following. A, staff is much younger, just a few years older than the campers. Staff has less world experience, fewer accomplishments, but they're less likely to question superiors. They're more malleable. And get this, you save money. The budget comes down. You don't have to pay them very much. That became the new program, START. That's the diving board into the new program, which I would say is 1983, 1990s. The goals change. And in 1993, they slip into the girls' camp, which we now have. Since 1989, the girls' camp was created, creating some of the budget problems that we have today, which is relative to why we're here partly today, because we want to save the existence of the camp right here in this town. What they did was they took a Harvard program, which was age inappropriate for teenage girls, and told the second-year campers, who became the de facto staff. Because once the staff is really young, inexperienced, then the second-year campers then start taking over. Second-year campers can't sit on a log with a kid. Then you start changing. And after 2 weeks to 4 weeks, that's ended. And they don't do it anymore. But it was radical. Personally, I was left out. As a staff member in 1979, I had the goals of Freddie on every single page of every weekly Rising Sun newspaper to tell me what I'm supposed to believe, to tell me what I'm supposed to teach, to tell me what the camp's about. It was on every page in that first year after the founder, Freddie, passed away. And that's what got changed. And I was on the program committee for many, many years, but all we were told is the following, and I have it in our minutes right here. We were told two things. One, should I get this right? Let me hold off on that. Let me start back. Let me get you the goals. I got emotional and I stopped for a second on that, so I'm going to come back to that. Let's go right now to the goals of camp. Did you guys have a chance to read this? I don't want to talk about it because it's up. So this is more information about Roland. I think it's valuable. Let's see. So much paper. Okay, you don't have the goals, John, that I said, by any chance? Okay, here we have them right here. It's just that hard to see. So, these are the goals, original. These are the new ones. And without the program committee to look at the difference, then there was just no adjudication. There was no way to have an opinion, even know about it. So, I'm sorry, now I remember the two things I wanted to say. One was, the new executive director coming in would be the ultimate explainer of everything to do with camp. But he was new. So they're changing the goals, they're making one person responsible for everything, but he doesn't know anything about this stuff. And so that's how the things got changed. Kind of under the radar. Nobody was aware. And what's most significant about the first goals, and you could call them philosophy, you can call them principles, you can call them objectives, you can call them goals, you can call them a mission. Apparently all these words are being conflated. There's a preamble ahead of the 4 goals each time. And that's the most significant change. The preamble for 50 years plus was the following. The objectives of Camp Rising Sun come under our general headings. It is, however, important to keep in mind that we are thinking of growing human beings and the methods and goals must be modified to each individual boy. Let me indicate what I think is the most important part of that. Methods and goals must be modified to each individual boy. Methods and goals must be modified to each individual boy. So whatever else comes after that, you have to modify it. I'll give you an example. Kid comes from Greece, never washed dishes in his life. How are we going to get him to wash dishes? Well, you can use force. This tells you not to. This tells you to find a clever way to work it out, which we did. All right? But here's how it changed. I can find it again. And now it became called a mission statement, which of course is something else, because a mission statement is actually a legal thing for a not-for-profit 501c3 to register with the state. But still, we're calling it mission now. It could be goals, it could be objectives. And here it says, the Louis August Jones Foundation is a not-for-profit organization based in Rhinebeck, New York, dedicated to developing and promising young people from diverse backgrounds a lifelong commitment to sensitive and responsible leadership for the betterment of their communities and the world. What's significant here? We are dedicated to develop a lifelong commitment to sensitive and responsible leadership. We're going to tell everybody what they owe us, what they owe the world, what they're responsible for. I'm not going to change something for each individual anymore. You're all going to be uniform, and you're all going to change, and you're all going to be responsible for blah, 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 blah. That affects all the world. I heard words like culture were bandied about. What does culture mean? So Michael Langberg says, I argued that culture meant classical music, Western art. While the new person coming in says, no, no, culture is international. What is important to different cultures. I kind of like that. I'm more with that. That's new. That's fine. Things change. We can change. But how you change is important. And I wanted to just make this more transparent today. Not blaming. But I want us to understand that if things change secretly, and I think this is as secret gets, it'll happen again. And some of us feel it just did. And that's why I thought it was absolutely critical to have a chance to expose this, because ultimately, and I know we don't all agree, but ultimately, it's the program that you want to save. I mean, if this is to continue for another 85 years, it's the program we want to save. But if the program is changed and keeps changing and you don't recognize it anymore, the program right now, I suspect has changed even greater. Right now, instead of 8 weeks, became 7 weeks, now it's 4 weeks. It could stay that way. Now, certain things, like we used to call them informal counselor, are gone. Trips on the weekend to go to church or a temple, gone. I could go on and on. I'm not there. I want to just keep reporting what I'm learning from counselors who are there. But it's a living thing. And so it's expected. It'll keep changing. But it's important to explain how. In 1993, when they tried to slip in this girls' camp program, believe it or not, I was a girls' camp counselor. And they didn't want to tell me anything about it. So they did what my friend over here is doing. They put me behind the video camera. Because then I couldn't speak. Now what they did with these leadership things is they would try to throw at the girls things that would make them break down. We would never break them down on purpose. So we're working at the girls' camp. It wasn't effective to break girls down. We would do that with the boys. And I don't think we always should have. Well, whoever does, maybe shouldn't have every time, but it was kind of a normal policy to break the boys down and then build them up. And with the girls, you break them down and they come back up so easy. So we didn't do that, but I would be behind the video camera to watch the kids break up and cry because of the program that was being put in. So I'm going to wrap up, because I promised it would be 30 minutes, and I think it's pretty much close, and give you a chance if you want to make any comments. Any questions, any thoughts, and or you want to see any of the material that I have. You want me to talk more? We're finished.
Maybe we can ask questions at the end, or at the end of the whole thing?
The end of the whole thing, I'll be here. Okay? We're good?
Wait, one question.
Yes.
Quick question. What's your hope going forward?
My hope going forward. I saw today, I went to the board meeting today, and my report is people were talking. But people who are young don't always have the same feeling as the people who are older. It's one of the things we learned in the meeting. And like everything else, apparently it comes down to money. Unfortunately, that's not my lifestyle and how I believe and how I was brought up and how I want to treat it to everyone I know. But it's all about money. So if we raise $2 million, we're fine. Yes?
Johnny, could you say why you're here and why you're giving this history and why you put so much effort into this whole?
Yeah. When the rollout happened with Obamacare, it turned out to be the network. It couldn't contain all the people applying for health insurance. And if you had any negatives, they came out big. This recent, let's say September last, it was announced that boys' camp would be sold. Not that there was a choice, not that there was a chance for discussion. It would be sold. And that stung many, many people. I haven't really been involved for about 10 years. I left in 2005 as the only male counselor in the girls' camp. And I left when the girls came. And I left because I was told to leave by the executive director who had not seen since. That particular person has never come back. He left. And after these years, I would tell you the reason is simple. I have opinions. I have beliefs, and I can support them, and I have a good history. So those should not be reasons to be let go. And I wasn't the only one. In 1982, it was the whole staff. And then it was also several camp directors, and there were others. So I left. I have no reason to come back. That kind of treatment, break my contract, make me for 2 weeks scrub, and then fire me. Tell me I can't have a ride to go on my vacation, my 1 day off after 2 weeks. It was pretty stunning. It seemed to be the opposite of everything I thought. So I'd like to believe that the history of the camp is to create a better culture. And my world was rocked. It wasn't me personally now, it was everybody. And so I feel connected again. When I go to the board meeting, I would say about 3/4 of everybody there was a camper for me. I was their counselor. So things have changed. And so that's why I'm here.
Thanks.
Thank you.